Why, hello everyone. How's it going? It's been a while since we did one of these. I've done some podcast interviews since I last did one of my own monologues into the abyss that is the internet. Um, Actually, did a really good discussion with on Mark Mansour's podcast. If you haven't heard that, you should check it out. Thought we had a really great conversation. But it's always fun to speak on my own little platform here on Substack Live. I'm actually streaming on X, Substack Live, and YouTube at the same time. Although haven't really focused on my YouTube channel. I should at some point. I know how much people like video and audio content. Well, some people do. Some people prefer to more long form stuff that I do from time to time. Actually, not from time. I do a lot of writing. I have a lot of time on my hands these days. But let's get started. Let's talk about where we are. A lot has actually happened since I did one of these lives, and I do want to say I'm going to try and monitor the chat on X and on Substack Live at the same time. People want to throw questions and comments out as we go. I'll try to look at them. Um, but yeah, this is there's definitely been a shift in the zeitgeist. This Epstein. I was going to say Einstein. This Epstein affair has clearly done some damage to Donald Trump politically, much to everyone's surprise. Who would have thought? But I think this is I think um, one of the things, a manifestation of something that kind of gives me hope, right, for the future in general, not just about like Trump and fascism, uh, but just like a general belief that at the end of the day, right, incoherence and lies and manipulation can only get you so far. At some point, narrative must make contact with reality. And this is an example of like one of those times where so much of the narrative of the populist right has been tied up in this idea that the left is this like organized cabal that for a surprising number of Americans believe encompasses a giant pedophile ring that is somehow tied in with liberal politics in this country. And there's no goods to be shown there clearly. And so Donald Trump finds himself flailing as he is covering it up almost certainly because there is embarrassing information in those files about him. Like, who can doubt that that's the actual reason why we're seeing all of this play out the way we are? But more to the point, you know, the Republicans and these fascists who are doing everything they can to hang on to power don't really have a message other than their opposition to the left and wokeism and globalism and whatever ism they fucking have, to justify to themselves aligning themselves with deeply corrupt figures that are basically treating the federal government now like a private equity target. Um, it really is remarkable when you think about just how corrupt this administration actually is. And there will be people on the right who will say they're no more corrupt than the left, and these people are full of shit. I mean, if you're sitting at a table with somebody and someone like brings up the Hunter Biden affair in response to the overwhelming amount of corruption that we're seeing play out with Donald Trump. I mean, Trump coin, accepting a fucking gift from a foreign government in clear violation of the emoluments clause. I mean, the fact that anybody in the center or any moderates would or lawyers would accept the argument that the arrangement that has it uh placed into the custody of his presidential library somehow is a loophole around the emoluments clause. I mean, this is bullshit. Not to mention that the taxpayers are going to spend $1 billion on this plane, based on estimates from the U.S. military, to make it serviceable as Donald Trump's flying palace. And to think that this is not, and then it's going to be handed over to his presidential library, where he'll presumably be able to use it for private use. I mean, this is fucking insane. And the idea that some like check from from Hunter Biden for a loan repayment in the tens of thousands of dollars is like somehow on the fucking which we have no evidence that wasn't what it was for, was somehow a smoking gun of some you know, uh, you know, unrestrained corruption in the Biden administration that basically leaves no difference between this administration and what we've seen before. I mean, this is like, I mean, you don't have to acknowledge this to your Republicans or centrist friends that want to play this both sides game. Certainly, Hunter Biden and trading on his father's name is gross. Whether or not it was illegal, um, I don't know, but I mean, I think we all know that in this society that the children of elite famous people tend to trade on the names of their elite famous parents. It's just something that happens in our society, and we can think that's gross, and I think we should have ethics rules and ethics laws and anti-nepotism laws. I support all of that. We should have clean governance. But the notion that Donald Trump is no more corrupt than the people that he replaced is a notion that deserves absolutely no engagement. Which brings me to the Sydney Sweeney affair. Um, I think one of the problems that the left in this country has, or the centrists, or even anti-Trump conservative, maybe less the anti-Trump conservatives, because I think they actually have some sense of fight in them, is this perpetual attempt to seem reasonable, to want to split the difference. You see this in Jeffries and Schumer, this like desire to reach for this sense of bipartisanship, when the other side is simply acting in perpetual bad faith. Very aware of the fact that they're engaging in unpopular policies, very aware of the fact that their big, beautiful bill is intensely unpopular with Americans. Even Republican voters recognize that this was a handout to the ultra wealthy. And they don't want to face any accountability for that. They just want to seize power permanently. And that's what we see playing out, right, with the redistricting efforts. I don't know why I'm getting tongue tied. Redistricting efforts in Texas. Um, I mean, this is disgusting. And of course, the Republicans are trying to make this all about, the laws that these Democratic state legislators that fled to Illinois are breaking the law. Nobody in opposition to these right wing motherfuckers should be apologizing for breaking the law at this point. I mean, this project that we are seeing play out in Washington is nothing but breaking the law. They are breaking the law right, left, and center, and calling the courts corrupt when the courts try to stop them from breaking the law. This is a fascist coup playing out in slow motion, and it has been since the very beginning of this administration, and we should call it that. And I mean, my advice, I'm not like actively involved in political organizing or political strategy in this country. I'm just a fucking D-list commentator here in Los Angeles. But my advice to them would be to like absolutely refuse to apologize for anything on their side at this point, and be completely focused on staying on the offense. I mean, this is an existential risk to the continuation of our system of self-government here in the United States. And it's not hyperbolic to say that. It absolutely is not. And the truth is that you know the more time we spend trying to triangulate compromise with what some people like to refer to as moderates in the Republican caucus. Simple. The more time we're losing as these institutions are dismantled, as our capacity for democratic possibility is diminished. This is a five alarm fire. Um, I think Democratic governors like Gavin Newsom, like Pritzker, like Hochul, and others who are starting seemingly to play dirty, are doing absolutely the right thing. And I think we can all acknowledge that gerrymandering as a practice, regardless of whether or not the Democrats or the Republicans do it, is anti-democratic. It's is a form of political corruption. I'm under no illusion that Illinois is also embarrassingly gerrymandered. And I am and I see that the Republicans are using this as a defense to justify what Texas is doing. Um, but we're not going to solve this problem at the state level. In fact, it has been a strategic blunder of the highest order, in my opinion, that Democrats, in California, in places like Michigan, that voluntarily disarmed with independent commissions, got nowhere. I mean, the Republicans laughed. They just laughed all the way to the polls, as they watched Democratic states unilaterally disarm and establish bipartisan independent commissions, while they just proceeded to try and entrench their advantage in the House of Representatives, um, by engaging in gerrymandering. These people have they think I mean, like, look, they believe that the left gaining power is like the worst possible thing that can happen, and if giving up on democracy is what they have to do, that's what they're willing to do. That's where they are. That's where a third of this country is. A good third of this country thinks that dictatorship is better than allowing the Democrats to win an election. And when you're in a situation like that, you need to recognize that any lack of pushback is to their advantage. We're not in a world like we were 20, 30 years ago, where we have two parties that are simply willing to accept the will of the voters. We have one party that has been willing to accept the will of the voters, the Democrats. Biden left office, Obama left office, and we have Republicans that when they lose elections, it's because of voter fraud. It's because of corruption on the left. That it's obvious that there's a hidden majority that would always vote for Republicans, and Democrats would never win if it wasn't for illegal immigrants. If it wasn't, if we had voter ID, like they're full of shit. They're full of shit, and you don't need to meet them where they are. You need to call them out on their bullshit. I know I said I was going to talk about Sydney Sweeney. I mean, the Sydney Sweeney thing is an example of how reactionary propaganda works. It's in the name. It's in reaction. The goal is to manufacture perpetual outrage, to create a sense of alienation, in the culture, among people, such that they are distracted from what's really going on, which is that an oligarchic capitalist class has closed ranks in and around Congress and the Trump administration, and is in the process of burying this republic underneath a corrupt oligarchical regime. And when we play that game, when we get into the debate on whether or not we're looking at some Nazi dog whistle, in a in the advertising for these jeans that plays to this, what someone apparently the left see as a hidden eugenics message. I mean, whether or not that's true or not, maybe it is. I have a hard time like believing that's what actually is going on there. But even if it was, you should have the wherewithal to understand that there's a mosaic of threats in front of you right now. One being just like the basic rule of law that protects us all. The basic due process rights that we're all entitled to under the Constitution, whether you're a citizen or not, by the way. Another fun game that the reactionary right likes to play is that the Constitution's concept of civil rights only applies to citizens. This is not true. That is not what the founders intended. It is not what the text of the Constitution says. In fact, the Constitution makes quite clear that all of the constitutional due process protections and civil liberties protections applies to all people under the United States jurisdiction, not just citizens. And to the extent that people on the right think that's wrong, well, they can go fuck themselves. They can go fuck themselves, because that's not what the Constitution says. It's not a matter of opinion. Anybody who thinks otherwise has no fucking idea what they're talking about as it pertains to what the U.S. Constitution says. So, if you are in this country, whether you're a documented, undocumented immigrant, whether you're a criminal, quite frankly, or whether you're a citizen, the entirety of the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights still applies. And if you think that that's wrong, then, I guess make an argument for amending the Constitution, but that's how the Constitution works. That's what a civil society is, right? We give criminals the benefit of due process of law. That's what we do because we are a civilized society. That's what the fucking founders intended. Because anything else is to turn the process itself into punishment by definition. Like, if you're deciding that due process protections shouldn't apply to criminals, what is that? What does that even mean? Right? So all the government has to do is accuse you of something to deny you due process rights, that you're guilty by accusation. That's the implication of that notion. It's fucking insane. And anybody on the right that says that has and claims they're a constitutional conservative is completely full of shit. Completely full of shit. And you should say that, because they are. Anyways, I'm a little bit worked up, as we all should be. I think a little bit. I think we're about to watch, apparently, in September, Donald Trump break ground on a massive expansion to the White House complex, a ballroom that is bigger than the current White House itself, which, I don't know about you, but like, and look, I'm not one to say that we shouldn't have progress and that we should exist in a piece of in a place of stasis. But I mean, this is like part of our collective heritage as a country. This is the people the people own the White House. Um and this idea that we're going to have gilded age balls in a giant fucking ballroom that dwarfs the current White House building on the White House grounds, it's just like it's just like fucking outrageous. These people that claim to love this country and love this country's history, um, and somehow trick people into thinking that that's true. They show no respect for tradition, no respect for norms, and are seemingly unable to, um, you know, I mean, they can't see right from wrong. Um, I mean, we live in a, I mean, yeah. So someone says that he destroyed the rose garden. Yeah, I mean, Jackie Kennedy's rose garden, right? I mean, he paved it. He paved the fucking rose garden. Um, like this idea that Trump is this victim as well, that pervades the right, that he's been persecuted. He's putting the country ahead of himself. I mean, he just got on Air Force One, flew to Scotland for a ribbon cutting ceremony at his fucking private golf course. Can you fucking imagine if Joe Biden was running a private company and showing up for private corporate events, which is what that ribbon cutting ceremony was, as a sitting president? And these people think that Donald Trump is putting the country ahead of his own personal interests. Like, you think, this is what you think? This is what people on the right have managed to convince themselves of, that this is a man of the people, the forgotten man who's covered covered the inside of the Oval Office in gold ornamentation, in gaudy gold ornamentation, trumpifying another piece of our heritage. Um this is, I mean, I simply cannot countenance this idea that Donald Trump doesn't get a fair shake. So I mean, I wrote a piece today, you know, about this, right? About this insane like attempt at balance that we hear in like so many of our fellow citizens. They'll, um, the particularly enraging form of Trump defense that comes from the person that says, "I'm no fan of Trump, and you're right about all of this corruption, but don't you also acknowledge he's done some good things like close the border?" Um, no, you shouldn't acknowledge this, because like, for a few things, using uh illegal tactics and fear, I mean, he's violating US law by shutting down the asylum program. The asylum program is on the books. We have a congressionally authorized process in this country for declaring asylum. I actually think that process is broken. I think we should have passed Langford's border bill in the last year of Biden's presidency, that would have fixed a lot of the problems with our asylum program. But that's what you're supposed to do. If the law is broken, you change the law. You don't just stop enforcing the law, ignoring court orders, because stopping illegal immigration is a good that superimposes itself over all the other moral considerations, that include, you know, uh, impartial justice, adherence to due process, following the Constitution. If you think that stopping illegal immigration is more important than following the law, like you're an authoritarian. You are an authoritarian. You're admitting you're an authoritarian if that's your position. And there's no argument to be made there. Right? It's it's like begging the question stances that the populist right takes, that people fall for, right? It's like, I mean, it's like, don't you can't you admit that, like, that that stopping illegal immigration is a good thing? Like, I mean, that's not like, you can we could stop crime. We could stop crime in this country by enacting a complete, like, surveillance state. We could have nightly uh curfews, could make it illegal to go out after dark. Be a lot less break-ins, and there'd be a lot less, nighttime crime. But you want to live in that world? I mean, there is simply a truth to the fact that living in a free society, comes with some degree of chaos, because, we're always going to have crazy people in society. We're always going to have deranged people. We're always going to have people who, uh, are going to put their own interests ahead of the interests of the community, and break laws. Um, I mean, we can make a decision to stop that at all costs, but it will come at the cost of our freedom, right? I mean, this swings both ways, right? Like, we could get rid of hate speech by getting rid of free speech. We can, you know, we can get rid of automobile accidents by banning driving. Like, the none like this idea that accomplishing a goal is its own justification for setting aside all other equities and considerations, is just, like, fucking ridiculous. And so we need to stop splitting the difference with these so-called moderates. Which brings me to my next point. I've been I've been I've been pretty consistent in my, economic views, over the last decade or so. I mean, and they still haven't really, like, changed, right? I mean, I do think that um entrepreneurial competitive markets have done a lot of good in the world. Um, I don't think that I would bristle at the notion of bringing an end to um, sort of the capitalist system um, as a whole. But I mean, capitalism isn't an like, I mean, shouldn't be an ideology. I mean, the ideology that we should have, I mean, I'm a liberal, and most liberals are, I mean, we tend to believe that the capitalist mode of production is superior to the socialist mode of production for various reasons. But this idea that there's this, like, black and white distinction here, that if one is to agree that the capitalist mode of production is ultimately, like, better for our collective economic well-being, doesn't mean that, like, we shouldn't have taxes, doesn't mean that we shouldn't tax the wealthy, doesn't mean that we shouldn't, like, have consumer protection laws. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't regulate business. um, Certainly we can have bad regulation, and surely we should be able to have a legitimate conversation around, like, what good and bad regulation of the market is. But it's unavoidable, I think, at this point, that the capitalist class in this country has become so drunk on political power, um, that they're, the K Street in Washington, the control of uh, communication platforms, Silicon Valley. I mean, it's reached a breaking point. I think the social contract has been broken, and now with corporate America more or less taking a knee for Trump has really, I mean, really caused me to like really reevaluate like what I think the Democrats need to do. I am more than happy at this point that Zoran Mamdani is like potentially on his way to becoming mayor of New York. Not because I agree with all of his policies. In fact, I think that the idea of having government run grocery stores is silly. Um, but I do think it's time to start having a conversation about um, how how the market works in this country. And if it takes left wing populists coming and forcing that conversation, I'm all for it. You know what, I think that I actually am. I'm pretty down on the idea now, actually, of having a moderate centrist uh, run, even if like that's like ultimately where my policy dispositions lie, like in a perfect world, because they've shown that they don't have any fight in them. They've shown that they're trying to balance all of these interests. They're trying to maintain uh, you know relationship with corporate America that has abandoned American democracy. Like I mean, at this point, like I yeah, I mean um, I'm I find myself like gravitating towards people like Ro Khanna and Alexia Ocasio Cortez, because these motherfuckers that have decided that um, you know the almighty dollar is more important than our shared project of building a nation of self government. I mean, it yeah, I mean, I think it demands a populist moment. It demands people who are gonna push back from the other extreme, and force those conversations. Uh, you know, I kind of makes it sound like I'm a hypocrite saying that, but I mean, I'd like to see. I'm happy to debate, you know, figures, on the left who disagree with me on my basic conclusion that that market economics is ultimately you know like something that we must maintain. I mean, but I also think that we're in a second gilded age. This is the gilded age V2, and we don't see corporate America acting as responsible stewards. We see them basically trying to get their piece of the pie. The tariff regime that Donald Trump is putting in place is going to be filled with Swiss cheese exemptions for his friends and perceived political allies. I mean, this happened before, by the way, in the late 19th century, early 20th century. I mean, this is a completely corrupt political economy, and Americans should not trust corporate America based on what they've done. Um, the major, the corporate media striking deals with Donald Trump on perceived bias and coverage. I mean, the idea that CBS is gonna and Paramount are gonna have bias monitors in their newsroom. Are you fucking kidding me? Is there gonna be a bias monitor at Newsmax, at Fox News? Like, what the fuck are we talking about? I mean, these. Corporate America has chosen a side, America, and and even if you think competitive markets, as I do, are really the only like reasonable way to you know create prosperity. you know, you have, I mean, that statement exists within certain conditions, right? That yes, right, like we have competitive markets and private property and private investment and public investment and in the form of public markets for publicly traded companies. And all of that, by the way, are features of our laws, right? I mean, private property exists because we have laws and courts to defend them. Something which, like, libertarians like to pretend isn't true. They think property is like is sort of a natural, like, feature of the world, that it emerges from weird, you know, spooky, you know, wacky ideas, like self ownership, in the in the way that libertarian libertarian. I mean, really, I mean, Murray Rothbard is not a libertarian. He was a fascist. In fact, Murray Rothbard was quite sympathetic, just so you know. Even though he opposed America's involvement in the Second World War, but also felt that Adolf Hitler was engaging in defensive actions, as a result of what he saw as unfair treatment under the Treaty of Versailles when he invaded France, like, via via Belgium. I mean, and like, you get like crypto people, Bitcoin people, and stuff like that, and they like talk about how they want you to read Rothbard's book. The guy was a fucking crypto fascist. And honestly, a lot of people, Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, is a fascist. Mark Andreessen at A16Z, he's a fascist. These are just fucking fascists. And this notion that they're libertarian, that I mean, I I have I have complicated, like, views on, on sort of like the, like, kind of the I think there are, like, genuinely good, like, well-meaning libertarians. I think they're confused. But in the business world, these like so-called libertarian CEOs, they're not libertarian. They are fascists. Or maybe at best wannabe, oligarchs and feudal lords. Like this concept of network states that this motherfucker Balaji Srinivasan and others in the crypto world are pushing. These are just feudal kingdom. These are just digital feudal kingdoms they're talking about. They want to recreate feudalism, and they think that wealth is its own virtue. That if you get wealthy, that must mean that you're qualified, to have, you're qualified to rule over others. That's what they think. That's what Mark Andreessen thinks. That's what Peter Thiel thinks. These people, like, I mean, these people need to be brought to heel. Our Constitution was not made to enthrone men like this. It was meant to contain them. And this is something that needs to be understood. You know what? One of the things that these libertarian motherfuckers, and then I'm going to keep using this word. I'm not going to be nice to them. Um, like to say to themselves is that, that their libertarian outlook is really just, restorative of classical liberal ideas, a sort of return to the ideals of the founding of this country. But, like, the truth is like, there's nothing could be more further from the truth. I mean, our founding fathers were by and large pretty skeptical of private power. They had, just finished dealing with, a giant British corporation called the British East India Company, which was, kind of, a pretty important figure in the whole thing, in the whole set of circumstances that led to the Boston Tea Party. They did add the Commerce Clause to the Constitution, and, I mean, 2 years after the adoption of the Constitution, 1787, or 3 years after the adoption of the Constitution, 1787, we saw regulation of the railroads and banks, and the founding fathers were still alive. I don't see any evidence of them screaming about how anti-capitalist it was to require the railroads to adopt a standard gauge such that we could connect the east and the west across like multiple private railroads. I mean, if we were doing that today, you'd be hearing spiels from Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen about how this was like forcing the railroads to adopt a standard gauge was standing in the way of like innovation and entrepreneurialism. I mean, this like projection into the past, this idea um that our founding fathers like worshipped this like radical like idea of like the private market is like nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. They were very much afraid of private power, and very much thought that the government should be the supreme power under the control of the people in a system of self-government. And they gave Congress the power to regulate commerce for a reason, uh, not because they were socialist, but because they recognized that private power, in the example of the British East India Company, could become very, very dangerous. And so this idea that commercial regulation is un-American, anti-entrepreneurial, is bullshit. These are and all of the political ideology coming out of these motherfuckers like Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen and Balaji Srinivasan, that like to talk about like sort of the virtues of sort of like the unrestrained free market. They're really just trying to hoodwink Americans into handing them the keys to the kingdom. Literally, they want a monarchy. I mean, they all subscribe to Curtis Yarvin's neo-cameralist ideology. They want a monarchy, and they want to be feudal lords in that monarchy. And Americans should understand that. Americans should understand that their dream is to turn you into a serf. And it doesn't make you a socialist or communist for wanting to fucking bring them to heel. It makes you a patriotic American, is what it makes you. The founders would agree, I promise you. Anyways, that's my rant. I wonder, do we have any questions in the chat room that are for me to react to? Let's see here. Mike, where do progressives find political power, economic power? The more power tech bros and others have, the more facility they have to abuse, and we continue to be left with less power, less money. Well, I mean, we have a lot of power, right? I mean, most Americans agree with everything I'm saying. Actually, I mean, when you look at opinion polls, like what, like 12% of Americans or something like approved of the big beautiful bill. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but it was like pretty low. 77% of Americans think that we should raise taxes on the rich. 77%, according to a polling, and including 40 some percent of Republican voters. Like the funny thing is that like progressive taxation is very popular among the American public. But like there's this notion that a lot of quite honestly, even Democratic moderates have bought into, that you can't win an election on the basis of like needing to, we have to raise tax. By the way, we have to raise taxes on everyone, really. Like eventually, like one day, people are going to come to understand this. We have to broaden the tax base. I mean, even if we significantly raise taxes on the rich have a lot of money, but there aren't many rich, and so it's like even if you tax the top 1%, a lot more, it's not going to be like, or even if you tax the top 1%, 50% of their income, or 60 or 70% of their income, it's not going to close the fiscal gap. In fact, this is one thing that the American left is really going to have to come to terms with, is like, there's going to need to be like probably some modest middle class tax hike at some point to sustain services in this country. All other European countries, Canada, Australia, all have much higher middle class taxes than the United States. Even as they have higher taxes on the rich, because like I mean, you simple the leverage you get from taxing 50-60% of the population, another 1 or 2% is simply a lot more than taxing the upper 1% like 50%. Like you can just do the math on this. I mean, a lot of people on the center and the left want to deny that this is the case, but like we're going to have higher taxes at some point. Otherwise, we're going to face fiscal collapse, and it's going to be worse for everyone. And it's very unpopular to say that, and I know that no fucking politician's going to have the guts to say that, but I'll say it because I'm not going to bullshit you. What about Ayn Rand? She was all for, Ayn Rand. I mean, I wrote a piece on Ayn Rand. You can look it up. It's called Clear Thinking via Ayn Rand, where I deconstruct the silliness of her philosophy. She has a, for those who don't know, I mean, Ayn Rand has she kind of developed her own philosophical worldview known as objectivism. It's really just it's an attempt to to package like egoism as virtue, and it's ridiculous. She wrote these books, the most famous being like The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged is it's a book that has captivated a lot of young, 20-something-year-old like libertarians, as some sort of cautionary tale of what happens if you allow the government to become more involved in the private sector or people's lives. Ayn Rand's thesis was the second that you start allowing more government regulation, it begets more government regulation, and it's a one-way trip to communism. Once you start, that's her. Basically it's like a slippery slope fallacy of like some absurd amount of pages that tries to paint industrialists and CEOs as these like thankless defenders of human civilization. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. I don't think much of Ayn Rand. It's not good philosophy. It's at best dorm room philosophy. I think it's like, if you read Ayn Rand when you're like 20 years old and like, you enter into like a fever dream for a few years of libertarianism. Like, I get it. We were all young and stupid. I was young and stupid too. But if you haven't grown out of it by 27, like you're I won't complete that sentence. What action can I take that will make a difference right now? Can't protest in the street. Why can't we protest in the streets? We should be able to protest in the streets. We're free to protest in the streets. But the action that everyone should take, and I give this advice to people, is like, be your most authentic self. Every minute of every day, be your most authentic self. Don't triangulate your morality with other people. When you see that something's wrong, call it out. Don't let lies stand. Don't fall into this go along to get along mentality, where you get tricked by these reactionary motherfuckers on the right into making you think that being balanced means constantly having to acknowledge the positives of Donald Trump and the negatives of the left or Biden or can you don't have to do that. Just like speak your truth every day, and not just when you're talking about national politics, but in your everyday life, right? Get more involved in your community. I'm not religious, but like, if you're, you know, if you go to church, right? Like, like be more involved there. Join the PTA at your school. I mean, be more involved in civil society and stand up for basic ethics and human dignity at every level of your life. Everyone needs to do this. This is how you stay free in unfree times, by creating, uh, you know, a container around you of an ethical, authentic life. It's your life, and do not give into despair. Do not like live in fear. That's what they want. The second that you're afraid, they're winning. Um, you're giving them territory that they have no right to stand on. This is your life. This is our collective inheritance. Uh, a free and independent republic, government of the people. So be your most authentic self every day. Um, Kate says, love everything you're saying. I'm an activist organizer advocating a national day of civil disobedience in state capitals in DC mid-September afternoon, not getting any traction as activist leaders focus on winning 2026 elections. I think that's too late, misguided. Your thoughts? I do think that, one of the things I really hope is that, I'd like to see some of these Democratic leaders like Gavin Newsom, and others, um, lead protests. I mean, Gavin Newsom should be like, if he, I mean, I'm not endorsing him or saying that he's the right person for president, but if someone like him wants to be president, I think he needs to, galvanize, uh, people out onto the streets. I mean, AOC is doing this. I mean, her rallies are inspirational. I mean, not everyone's paying attention to that, but I think like we need to do that. We need to build that energy, because you know what? Like, and if you're a politician that is afraid of this, afraid of raising the temperature because you somehow think that we still live in some world of respectability politics. Let me tell you something out there. Your followers, your supporters, they're scared. And the way that you make your supporters less scared is you create the conditions by which they feel safe, by creating community for them. So yes, more rallies, more political engagement, more protests. March with people, make new friends. Um, let's look for some more comments and some other feedback here. LD says, I'm not necessarily reading these in orders. With the gerrymandering decision, Ruchu v. Common Cause 6 years ago, I see the Supreme Court washing its hands of the judiciary and putting any guardrails on gerrymandering. So can we stop it? Can we? I mean, this is like the big, I mean, this is the big question. It does look like the Supreme Court's going to take up a gerrymandering case in the next, in the next like Supreme Court session. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a risk. I mean, this is a captured court. Uh, the the Republicans have, I mean, they've captured the Supreme Court. I mean, if I think more pressure needs to be brought to bear, on the Supreme Court. Um, I do think it will matter, this I think this court will respond to public pressure. I mean, if this court thinks Donald Trump is definitely going to lose, and thinks that this country is going to like turn against MAGA in a big way, they're not going to necessarily want to be um, remembered as villains of history. So, we've seen some of this before. We've seen Amy Coney Barrett like buck Trump a few times. We've seen Gorsuch buck him a few times. Um, I'm not trying to say that these are like good people that you should consider on your side, but I do think you should operate on the basis that they can be persuaded by public pressure. And I think we do want the Supreme Court to be afraid of a very, very angry American populace that expects them to do their fucking job and stand up for the Constitution and the law, and for the democratic principles of this country. Let's look at more questions. What do we got going on here? Can you talk about reality of possible Iran, Russia, China axis? Um, I don't like. It's not clear to me that China and Russia are as close allies as people might think. If anything, uh, Putin has sort of shown increasing distrust in the Chinese. I think there's like actually a pretty interesting dynamic between the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, in the sense that the Russians are sort of fiercely independent. They have Putin is a sort of a imperial revanchist, and sort of seeks to see Russia become a great power in the way that it was during the years of the Soviet Union. I actually think he finds Beijing quite threatening, and I think Beijing would very much like to turn Russia into a supplicant state. And I think that actually kind of, in some ways, like limits like how much they would really work together. Um, I mean, Russia and China are enemies. I mean, they're friends of convenience, but they're enemies in other respects. So they're not friends. They're not friends in the same way that like Western allies are friends. It's just that they both hate the West. Um, Jennifer Anderson says Autocracy Inc. by Ann Autocracy Inc. by Anne Applebaum is an amazing book. You should definitely read it. I read it right when it came out. I mean, it was like 2 years ago or something. It's a fantastic book that really does show you, I think, how um, corrupt, wealthy interests, um, from Russia and beyond, Hungary, and throughout the Western world, have been working in concert to dismantle um, liberal democracy. What else do we got going on here? Musk just got a $29 billion stock addition. I just did the math. This equates to about equivalent of 85 billion for every $85 for every man, woman, and child in the U.S. What the fuck? More money. Well, we'll see how much that stock is worth, right? In 2 years, I think he there's I think it's disgusting, like, obviously. But I mean, he doesn't get it immediately. He has to like meet certain goals and stay at the company. And I think there's a lot of pressure from Tesla shareholders for him to step away from politics. And this money is kind of being used as a carrot to like pull Elon away from the political world, by the shareholders. Like, so like maybe it's not all bad, this options package they're trying to create, but we'll see. Doesn't mean that the amount of money that we're talking about here isn't, you know, disgusting, but from a political dynamics perspective, it might improve things. I don't know. What else? What else do we got? What else do we got going on here? Uh, Harper Thorpe says No judgment of Trump should be made without context, including intent. The context is racism. The intent is cruelty. No, um, uh, so I don't. I actually wouldn't agree with the notion that like Trump is like motivated by racial animus. I don't think he's motivated by anything other than his own sort of like his own narcissism. I'm not saying he's not racist. I think he is. But I don't think that like Donald Trump. I don't think of Donald Trump as like terribly ideological. I mean he's not without ideology, but I mean his ideology is really just about like might makes right. Like uh he's somebody who thinks he's God's gift to the world and that nobody is smarter or stronger than him. And this is like very like central to his psychology. Um, and he's very driven by his lizard brain, as opposed to sort of any kind of considered um like ideological worldview. I mean, unlike JD Vance, by the way, who's a deeply ideological figure, and is capable, I think, of quite sophisticated planning, and makes him a very, very dangerous figure, especially if Donald Trump ends up kicking the bucket and Vance ends up as president. I think we're in some pretty I actually think that if JD Vance becomes president, that's like we're gonna see um, we're going to see some really dark shit start to happen in this country because I mean he's on the record as wanting to overthrow the Constitution, as he said very openly to Vanity Fair back in 2022. I don't think that I don't think Donald Trump has like an actual plan to overthrow the Constitution. I just think that he just from moment to moment like tries to um, you know stare down like anything that stands in the way of his power, which like over time has the same effect as overthrowing the Constitution. But I mean, JD Vance like wants to turn the United States into a monarchy. And you can look this up. He's on the record as like wanting to do this. I mean, and the fact that American voters and the American media just don't seem to give a fuck about that is like it's quite surprising to me. Um, what else? Do we have more questions? How long have we been going? Oh, it's 2:03. It's an hour in now. Wow. Roger Helbig said, Trump is no victim. All should learn that Trump most likely orchestrated J6, and as the mob boss pardoned the criminals he sent to the Capitol, read the government's. I mean, Trump definitely precipitated January 6th. Um, this idea that he had nothing to do with it, that your right wing friends like to pretend is bullshit. Um, I mean, I mean, he should have been disqualified, right, under the insurrection clause. But the Supreme Court decided that that's basically a non-functioning part of our Constitution. Funny that constitutional conservatives, my ass. Um, what else? What else? Scrolling back here. Jennifer says we need more D-list commentators. The current class of people driving the message. Yeah, I mean, I'm. I mean, there's like, I mean, I'm. There are some folks out there that I think are. I mean, I think Mehdi Hassan is doing an amazing job. My politics don't necessarily like line up one to one with Mehdi, but like, I mean, that guy is like doing an incredible job. I added Zateo to my recommended reads on Notes from the Circus. Um, just being absolutely impressed by what he's doing. I mean, you know, he's bringing sort of a level of fight and a sort of a you know, holding power to account and speaking truth to power in a way that you simply cannot like say that like the rest of the media is doing. I mean, I have respect for, I mean, honestly, probably the one person that I probably currently respect most in the mainstream media is George Stephanopoulos. Like, he like actually, I think he you know he tends to I think to present things in a well contextualized way. It remains to be seen like how long he's going to last before Trump demands that Disney fire him from ABC. We'll see if that happens. Disney's like in Trump's pocket at this point. So we'll see how long he's able to hold on for. Hopefully he doesn't give a fuck. Um, so George, if you're listening, I commend you as like one of the few shining stars in the traditional media that's actually calling this shit out the way it should be called out. Do we have any other question? We have any other questions? What else? KG Gallagher says, I'm so worked up today. They're desecrating the White House, destroying the Rose Garden, putting all the gold crap inside. Looks like a brothel in there. I mean, no disagreement with you there. Jennifer Anderson says, I didn't think it was eugenic until I watched the videos and the one touted her blue eyes and they got to do that. They got to do the dog whistle and wink and nod. Let's go back to it. Like, whether it's a dog whistle or not, um, I don't think really changes the thrust of my argument. I mean, we're in a society now where like people are just openly like Nazis on fucking X. And you know, Elon Musk, is openly fascist and CEO of a company. The fascist shit's out there. Whether or not this is fascist or not, and I have my doubts. I would just simply say that what's really important, what is going to save us, is sustained attention on like the sustained attention on the direct institutional assaults against our democratic way of life. We need to win that battle before we can start even thinking about winning these other cultural battles. And I think most Americans would agree with that if we could educate them on what's actually happening. And we do that by paying attention to the things that matter most in our day to day. In this, what Texas is doing is an example of that. We should be paying very careful attention to the way that Republicans are trying to steal the midterm elections, and they are trying to steal them. Don't the next time that any Republican tries to talk about election integrity and tries to accuse the left of stealing elections, tell them to go fuck themselves. They're lying. What else? Got some other questions. I know some of these are like actually old. I'm kind of going in reverse order. Stuart S says Thomas Piketty, economist, established that in capitalism, inequities grow over time. With this financial power, it seems that political power goes along for the ride. Maybe not a stunning conclusion, but what we have seen could have been predicted by. Other Western countries are capitalist economy. Canada, for example, has massively limited corporate and union donations to no more than I think what individuals can contribute. Similar in the United Kingdom, you see way, way, way less corporate influence in other advanced capitalist economies. Obviously we had campaign finance reform. We had the McCain Feingold law that was passed and signed into law by George W. Bush of all people, but then sort of overturned by Citizens United in 2011, which was a disastrous, decision. Yeah, it is possible, to limit corporate influence. We could ban lobbying. or significantly limit it. We could ban corporate donations by if we can overturn Citizens United. And at this fucking point, we should be prepared to pack the fucking Supreme Court to make that happen. Um, but it's very clear that the system as it is right now cannot go on. Um. Anyways, about a hour into this, getting a little bit talked out, but I'll try to respond to a few more things if there's other people in here with some comments. Um, SJY says conservatives also think markets are a natural phenomena. Yeah, I mean this idea that capitalism. I mean, you see this a lot, right? Like this sort of, especially among you know folks who are into things like Austrian economics, these Mises Institute idiots who sort of see capitalism as sort of like a sort of the natural state of things. It's a very peculiar like view. Um, I'm aware of no capitalist system that has existed outside of a a system of outside of a state system with rule of law and courts um, and uh, and government oversight of markets. This idea, this anarcho-capitalist fever dream is fucking insane. But the crypto people think they've got it figured out. They don't, but they think they do because they're fucking stupid. Anyways, I swore a lot in this one. Sorry, I'm feeling a little bit worked up. Um, what else do we got? What else do we got in here? Robert Gonzalez says, I agree with your viewpoint. I was a hardcore fan of objectivism. Now I'm a Bernie supporter. I give her credit for making non-believer. Yeah, I mean, here's like I think a way, this whole argument of like socialism versus capitalism, I think misses a much bigger point, right? Um, in a healthy democracy, we should be constantly reevaluating our policies. We should, I mean, that's what elections are for, right? I mean, we vote someone in, they pass a series, let's say they pass, like, let's say, like, the populist left wins in 2028 and they pass a bunch of economic policies that end up blowing up in their faces. And that leads to, you know, a change in policy in the future. I mean, I do think a lot of economic regulation went too far in the 1960s and 1970s, and some of the neoliberal reforms made sense. Many of them different. I mean, I think a lot of us. I mean, I think looking back, I don't think Glass-Steagall should have been repealed in 1997. We wouldn't have had the financial crisis in 2008. But there was some. I mean, I I I think the economic data suggests it's better not it's better to tax consumption and income rather than to tax corporate profits. That's generally the way Europe and Canada and other countries work. Believe it or not, like Canada and Europe generally has lower corporate taxes than America. Like seriously, and much higher consumption and income taxes, and those societies have far less income disparities, and that's not because it's not about getting into this sort of the weird class warfare stuff. It just has to come with what's like the most economically efficient thing to do, right? Um, when you tax, it's much more effective to tax the rich when they turn profits into income, or they turn money into spending. It's just much more efficient. It's harder for them to escape taxation that way. But like, so I think that the way that we sort of have focused on like the left focuses on corporate taxation. I sometimes think that they're missing the forest through the trees. Um, there's far more efficient ways to tax the wealthy than corporate profits. And that would be more consistent with sort of the European, like even Scandinavian countries, right? Have tended to have lower corporate taxes than America, with more emphasis on income and consumption. Like in the case of Europe, the value added taxes, the VATs. In Canada, they have what's known as the HST, the harmonized sales tax, and in Australia they have a GST, which is very similar to the VAT. I mean, the main difference being that it's the tax is assessed at time of purchase versus like being assessed in sort of the wholesale price. Bunch of wonky tax policy there. But I mean, I just think that the left needs to have more open conversations about this rather than being fucking stupid about it. But that's just me. Anyways, I think that's gonna have to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll have a full recording of this up for those of you who didn't catch the whole thing, or those of you who didn't catch it at all. You can watch the recording. I mean, usually have it up within like an hour of like finishing up here. But this was fun as always. Thanks for the questions. And remember, stay human, everyone. It's the task of our time. Don't let these algorithms and AIs optimize your humanity away. That's my appeal to you today. And have a great week.